Hello, everybody. This is Dread from Miss Valley Entertainment News, and we're going to jump into some more Avowed extended gameplay with breakdowns by, I'm guessing, Obsidian employees here, breaking this down for us and showing off their game. Now, I understand some people out there are negative about what they've seen and heard about Avowed already. Let me just say, I certainly understand gamers having different preferences. I get that. I understand not my preferences in a game is not going to be necessarily your preferences. I understand there are people who like games that focus on different things. There are people who like games that are in certain genres. People like games that look a certain way or where combat is a certain way, right? I get that. I get that. Gamers are different, and gamers are allowed to like different things. What I don't really understand right now, and maybe it's because I'm positive about this game, what I don't really understand is people leaving negative comments, though. I mean, I certainly again understand people saying, "Hey, I don't think this game is for me. It doesn't look like what I want to play," and that's an entirely fair comment for someone to make. What I don't understand is people showing up in comments and trashing a game that hasn't even come out yet because it doesn't fit their wheelhouse of games. I just don't understand that viewpoint of doing that. Now, Avowed is something that looks like it's right in my wheelhouse. I'll admit that, and it's something I've had varying degrees of excitement about. I mean, they've gone up and down and up and sideways. I don't know. Um, so my thoughts on this game have been kind of all over since it got announced. But right now, after seeing some of the gameplay, I've been pretty excited for this game. Um, but I'm going to leave it up to you whether or not you're excited for it or not. I just would encourage people don't you know don't go into a game and just trash it because it's not your type of game or because it doesn't have what you want in a game. That doesn't make it a bad game or something you should be overly negative about. I just think, you know what, live and let live. There are different kinds of games out there. This is a good gaming company. They're not doing anything suspect. They're not doing anything criminal in nature. They're not trying to milk you out of every last dollar. They're not one of those kind of companies here. Okay, it's a good gaming company, and we should, even if we don't want to play their game, should give them some kind of support. Be positive in that sense. And any of you who want to come by and say this is an Xbox game and I hate Xbox, so I'm gonna shit all over it, please don't. Just go somewhere else. Like I don't want that kind of attitude showing up in my comments. Um, I just don't think people who will write off something and attack something because of the platform it's on should really be having a voice on my channel. Quite honestly, I just don't think there's any room for that here. There's plenty of places where you could do that and people will listen to you, and then other people will come in and argue with you on it. There's enough negativity in gaming right now, God knows. I don't think we need that here. I'm not interested in your platform wars in the least. I think they are the most fucking stupid thing in gaming, quite honestly, is the damn platform wars. Don't give a shit about what platform you will go out there and stump for. I don't care what platform you will carry the signs up and down the street saying it's the only platform that's good. I don't give a crap. Go away with those attitudes. I don't want them here. We are here to actually talk about games legit, talk about good companies, talk about bad gaming practices. We'll talk about what we need to in the gaming industry. But we are here in the end to make positive changes in this industry and to bring a little entertainment as well. So let's take a look at this. I have not seen this yet. It's a 25-minute video, so I do apologize if I run along with this, which I sometimes do. But we'll see what they've got to say, what they've got to show, and what I feel like commenting on. Let's go.
Games in this podcast range from E to M. Hello and welcome back to the official Xbox podcast. My name is Tina Amini. I'm here with my fellow co-host Jeff Rubenstein, but we also have two very, very special guests for this very special, relatively shorter podcast episode. We have...
By the way, if anybody is going to attack Carrie Patel, because I've seen this before, please, for the love of God, don't be doing it because she is a female, okay? I don't want the sexist, stupid attitudes of people who are troglodytes and think females can't be in gaming, females can't be in charge of gaming, females can't be a game director. I don't want that shit here. Take it out back to the dumpster and light it on fire and lay down in the fire because you're a garbage human being if that's what you think. So don't do it here. You got legit beefs with her, you better lay them out or don't talk at all.
Carrie Patel here from Obsidian, as well as Gabe Paramo from Obsidian. Can you guys introduce yourselves just briefly, what you do at Obsidian and on Avowed?
My name's Carrie Patel. I've been at Obsidian for over 10 years now, and I'm the game director of Avowed.
My name is Gabe Paramo. I'm the gameplay director, and I've been at Obsidian for about 5 years.
Cool. We'll delve into those roles a little bit. But first, we're actually recording this a little behind the scenes here, right before the Dev Direct goes live. Like, how does it feel like you're just about to share Avowed with the world?
It's so exciting. I mean, I know the team has put so much hard work into this game, and we're going to get to see a little bit of that in some of the footage we're looking at today. And so it's really rewarding knowing all the love and polish that's gone into this to finally get to show people where Avowed is headed.
It was very cool being down at Irvine, filming with you guys for Developer Direct. So I got to be behind the scenes, and it was very fun to see the office.
Just noting, there's like a millisecond difference between what they're saying and the lips moving. Somebody should have noticed that and just tweaked it because that's gonna drive me a little bit crazy.
See everybody busy working, but also excited to present about the game. And we're gonna, in just a minute, see actually some extended footage from the Developer Direct, so it's very exciting. But let's talk about Aora first, because we are in Aora. That's part of a world that you guys have built previously for the Pillars of Eternity universe. So we know that that's very Obsidian-like, of course, but in Developer Direct, you both talked about Obsidian's pedigree and like what makes Avowed a very Obsidian game. So what, aside from Aora and that context and building off of the Pillars universe, what would you both say makes it an Obsidian game?
For me, it's really about our player-centric approach to roleplay. Our studio's motto is "Your world's your way." And so the way we really approach choice and consequence and everything else is just giving players opportunities to define who they are in this world, how they want to behave, like just what fantasy, what challenges they want to undertake. And so with all of the content we design, whether it's quests, companion relationships, or gameplay, which Gabe can talk to, we really try to create this player-shaped whole so that we're always leaving room for players to really step in, drive the game and the story forward, and just define who they are in this setting.
Yeah, from the gameplay perspective, right, if you look at Grounded is your world's your way. You get to build whatever world you want. In the context of Avowed, right, we've tried to lean into that with the gameplay mechanics and sort of let the player, through the loadout system, through what companions you can choose, through the abilities they can choose, they're throwable that they can select, right? Just what does the player want to do for combat, and being able to support that in as many ways as possible.
So in the Dev Direct, you kind of swooped through very quickly. There's a lot there to
Looking forward to using the pistols in this game. It's been a while since I played Pillars of Eternity. I know I like that aspect of the game. Looking forward to dual wielding the pistols. That just to me looks really cool. And also I really find it intriguing. You can single wield a pistol while you've got a shield in the other hand. To me, that looks like, I don't know, maybe other games have done that before. But it looks like my mind almost doesn't comprehend it. It's very interesting.
Taken. So as Tina said, we have some extended footage here, and we're actually gonna, we're gonna bust out our telestrators and we're gonna pause and say, okay, well, what did we just see here? So why don't we roll some of that footage and let's get into it.
By the way, before we actually get into this part, just let me know down in the comments below if any of you have played Pillars of Eternity 1 or 2. if you're familiar with the Aora, I always called it Eora, but it's more like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. If you're familiar with Aora and the Living Lands and the way Pillars did things, because I think Pillars of Eternity for a top-down RPG such as it was CRPG wasn't a cookie cutter thing. It didn't follow everybody else's way of doing things. It did branch out a lot, and I think the skills and the character sets you could choose, and to me there was a lot there that was very different and kind of you had to get used to during the game. And I'm kind of wondering how many of you are familiar with that, so you're able to kind of juxtafy that, you're able to put it side by side with what you're seeing here from Avowed and say, okay, I understand what the gameplay was like in Pillars of Eternity, and I'm looking as well for how does that go along with what I'm seeing for this game, which is clearly a first-person single-player game, not a top-down RPG. How they kind of meld that together and make it work. I'm just curious.
Tell us, where in the game is
Like
this
the skulls
area?
there?
How do you encounter it even?
So this is Shatterscarp, which is the third region in the game. But what we're exploring here is just one tiny little adventure space in one corner of the region.
And is this something you could even miss? Is this an optional area or something you're definitely going to hit?
It's absolutely missable. Discoverability and letting players be the authors of their own experience is obviously very important to us.
Okay, I see he's got arrows on his back, but was he throwing things at you, the guy in the water here? Or was he had a bow?
Discoverability and...
So he's got arrows here, but he's throwing darts or knives? That's interesting. These look like lower level enemies, but I really like the fact that they look like melee guys, and then this guy clearly uses a bow as well as thrown weapons. So they're mixing it up. I like that. I do like the swamp look, and even the reflections in the water and the ripples look really good. What I'm not seeing is a breeze moving the reeds and things. That would be cool to see as well. But it's not even an area that has a breeze, so that could be why. But
letting players be the authors of their own experience is obviously very important to us. So the content you're seeing here, the quest you're encountering, the little stories and nuggets of adventures you're finding, that's really for players who go out and seek it out.
It'd be so cool.
Exploration gets rewarded, of course,
They look
and
good.
this is, from my understanding,
well
a
fleshed
side
out.
quest too. So it's definitely something you can stumble on,
There's your companion.
decide to partake in or not. But I'm curious, who are these enemies? Because I feel like we just
very, very three-dimensional looking plants and things. It pops with three-dimensional stuff. When you have a lot of muted colors, sometimes things fade into the background and don't look three-dimensional. This looks three-dimensional.
wandered into their territory, and it's just a family having a good old time, and we're just killing them out of nowhere. So who are these enemies, and why do we hate them?
Well, I don't think we hate them, actually. They're fine. It's more that they just don't really... There are Zorups, right? They're from Pillars of Eternity. They don't really speak a language that we can understand, but they're very territorial, right? So you've stepped on their space. They're trying to get back their territory in this area, and yeah, they're just gonna take down whatever gets in their way.
Can I just call it? We've confirmed swimming. Swimming is part of this game now.
Yep.
Confirmed. But speaking of enemies, as we're going through this
Use
area,
magic
I'm
to
just
pull your
curious,
enemy
what
to
are
you.
the
That's cool.
other types of enemies that you might encounter, and what does that difficulty
The
progression
rocks
look
and
like?
the
'Cause I know
steps
we're
look good
about
there. Do you see? I'm trying to look at everything here. Even the rocks and the steps over here, just they look really, really nice. Maybe I'm just being too... Maybe you're going to accuse me of being too fanboy. But the textures here... Again, who knows, if this is an HD, broadcast or what, and of course YouTube dumbs everything down in their video after. But it still looks like very good textures. Again, this reminds me a lot, of course, of this area of looking at Conan Exile stuff.
As we're going through this area, I'm just...
The falling water looks good. Look at some of these things here. There's a lot of friggin' detail in this. And it all looks very 3D. It pops out very well, even though these are muted tones here. Look at the lush fern growth and stuff. That's just wow. Or is that ivy? I don't know. Whatever it is, that looks awesome though.
Just curious, what are the
We don't see many RPGs that are this bright colored, and I know some people that will turn them off, and I get it. It's gonna take a while to get used to. It really is. But I think it looks good still.
other types of enemies that you might encounter, and what does that difficulty progression look like? Because I know we're about midway through here, but perhaps later in the game, what does that look like?
Well, we've shown off ogres, and we've shown off, big, scary-looking bears.
Yep.
But yeah, we have archetypes, right? So like healers and brute melee characters, brute range, people that are trying to use magic,
Oh yeah.
melee attacks,
Ooh,
right?
cool.
So
Nice
just
sliding
a
mechanic.
bunch of variety of enemies that you can
Looks good. More of a
fight
jump than
and
a
have to
climb
use
almost,
the
but
gameplay mechanics in order to defeat. Yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff in the combat that actually I want to go back to. So if we can back that video up and go back to that first encounter.
Speaking of gameplay mechanics.
Exactly. I have some questions here.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're armed. I see you immediately you pull out a sword and a shield. It looked like there was a parry move that the player uses here. Like right. Well, it's coming up here in a second. And then you're also charging the shield. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is our dual wielding system. Basically, the player has two loadouts, and you can put something in your offhand and a weapon in your primary hand, and we allow the player to mix and match one-handed weapons.
you got a potion there.
And so right there, what you're seeing is your sword and board, right, going into it and trying to close the gap in the distance, and having the ability to parry with your shield. And power attack with your sword.
So there was a shielded enemy, and it felt like the sword and board stopped working. But then you also, right there, you pull somebody in a little, get over here. Talk to us about some of the different skills and abilities.
Yeah, so that's one of our ranged units that basically is out in the distance. You're using Into the Fray, which is a mechanic to allow you to pull the enemy closer to you. Again, we have power attack. That's a blocker. That's essentially not your basic melee attacks are just not going to go through it.
So that's cool. I mean, I don't want to compare it to Skyrim, but I'm thinking about Skyrim, and I'm trying to think about Skyrim, but I play so much modded, and the combat's somewhat changed. To think back to original Skyrim, obviously, somebody has a shield, you hit the shield, and it's kind of blocked, right? But, you could keep bashing on their shield, and their health will keep going down, even though they have the shield up. You could hit their shield 10 times or whatever and kill your enemy. But they're saying in this game, your attacks aren't going through because they've got a block up. I also like the fact that you take your archers and your ranged people that you're out there facing, and you're going to use that ability or spell ability, whichever it is, to pull them in close to you, where now you've got the advantage instead of them having it. That's really cool. I like this. I also like how the bodies are marked. I saw the chests are marked too. It's kind of telling you where there's things that you can pick up. And we're not seeing anything on screen as far as HUD. I don't know whether for this gameplay they have the HUD hidden. I'd like to see what the HUD actually looks like though. Or is it like this all the time and all your HUD is hidden? That would be interesting. Different. Not sure if I'd want it hidden. I'd want to see when my health goes down and different things, but...
So you're going to have to use your power attack to be able to break their block.
Or you can swap to the wand if there's a shielded
So
enemy,
because of
you're
the
not
jump
getting
or a
through to them.
climb,
So
it kinda
how
looks more
often in the
cross
game do you
between the
find
two.
maybe yourselves through the experience? I'm much more a magic player. I suspect
kind of more of a jump.
I will be heading down like more of the wanded path, but clearly there's diversity with enemies and diversity in how you need to approach them. So can you talk about like how much you guys maybe in your play experiences have been swapping between them? Like what can we expect as players?
We definitely try to have these mechanics that are common amongst most weapons, but at the same time, try to give the space across all the different
like an
weapon
axe.
types. So if you're using the wand, there's a lot of homing going on there. There's a lot of it's magic damage. It's going through their armor and stuff like that.
That's why I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Versus again using a melee weapon where you're going to have to.
Hey, that looked like there was an AOE attack there. There's a big red circle on the ground.
And where you're going to have to.
Oh, no, it's back a little bit. I want to see that.
So if you're using the wand, there's a lot of homing going on there. There's a lot of there's a lot of, it's magic damage. It's going through their, it's going through their armor and stuff like that.
That's why I like it.
Right
Yeah,
here.
yeah, exactly.
See, it looks like you put an AoE effect on there because there's a red circle now. Interesting.
Versus, again, using
throws them,
a melee weapon
and
where you're
shatter
going to
them.
have to
Nice. That
get
looks
closer
good.
to them. Yeah.
I like
So
that.
a little bit personal style,
Yes.
a little bit like what are the enemies you're actually dealing with in that moment. Yeah.
Now, if you're looking for Elden Ring or Dark Souls combat, I don't think you're going to find it here unless you may have the ability to put your game on a harder mode, in which case combat may be harder, but it's probably going to be harder in that case, like a lot of games do, where your enemies just have more hit points, right, or you do less damage. But some people will still enjoy that aspect.
One of the great things about the system that Gabe's team has been building, though, is it's very flexible, and it supports players mixing and matching between weapons, between ability trees. Respecking is, pretty easy for players who really want to try something different. So when I'm playing, I kind of love to.
So when they say respecking is easy for players who want to try something different, what I'm looking at here with this game is I'm believing that they're looking at a game that's easy for people to get into. And I think in that sense, we can go back to this being like the Skyrim for Bethesda in that sense then. Bethesda was criticized by some people who love Morrowind or Oblivion or both for dumbing the game down. But what it did very, very well was it made it simple for people to jump into the game who didn't even know anything about these kind of games. And I'm thinking Avowed is trying to do that same thing. They're trying to draw in people who don't really know a lot about RPG games or fantasy games or whatever, with a game that's very easy for them to figure out. It's not going to be the most difficult game. And, they're going to try something and they're going to be like, hey, now I can respec and I can try this loadout. Oh, this is cool too. Like it, for ease of new players and for drawing new people in, I think that's an excellent thing. Now, hardcore players and those who like difficulty aren't going to like that. I understand why, but this may be the first shot in this game here. Is how do I say it? This may be what Avowed is trying to do, is draw people in like Skyrim did, and then expand their universe with other games set in this realm, where maybe things would, going forward, get a little more difficult or a little bit more for people who now are used to this game and the way it did it, right? That's I don't know that, but I'm kind of hoping maybe that's if sales go well, that's something they're going to look at, setting more games in these lands, doing more of these type of games, doing a sequel to this or whatever, and maybe making things a little more difficult, switching things up a little bit. We'll see.
To follow my sense of curiosity, and sometimes you'll find a new unique weapon with some pretty nice buffs on it, and maybe you'll decide to rock that for a while, even if it's not what you've been using previously.
So there is a skill tree in this game.
Yes.
Yes, there is.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I love a good skill tree.
So changing your skills and your loadout and kind of switching things up, maybe because you've been using pistols and wands or whatever, and you find this great two-handed axe kind of thing, and you really want to have two-handed weapons. I'm assuming they do. I don't know. You find this great axe and you really want to use it, so you're going to stop and you're going to respec, which points into axes and melee, so you can use this weapon and try it out. Like that's an excellent mechanic in that sense.
So
yes.
it's good to confirm that.
One of the things we've done in terms of skills in the tree is we've tried to, pillars as classes, right? We wanted to be able to grab as many abilities from the trees as possible, and sort of categorize them a little bit differently, so that the player doesn't feel like they're locked into a single choice at the start of the game. They can kind of mix and match, between different abilities, so you can get some you have some variety. You can choose to kind of commit to being a fighter, right, per se, but it's not an enforced kind of class setup.
And as Carrie said, you can respec if you don't like the direction you went down.
Yeah.
I love that.
But there are definitely some pretty fun and wild combinations, like, you can do your traditional sword and board, or, play more of a magic wielder with a grimoire and a wand, but you can also take...
Okay, there you go. A grimoire, it's a hard word for me to say, and a wand. So as a mage type character, you've got two different ways to cast magic. One is with a wand, one is with your spell book. So for those who are thinking there's no magic in this game, there's just wands. No, there is. You haven't really seen it yet, or I mean, I don't know if they actually pull out a book in one hand, but hasn't been a focus on anybody yet. But it is there. It is there. So you can play a straight mage and don't have to use wands if you don't want to.
Take a pistol and a shield and just charge around the battlefield and fight characters at medium distance. And you can use some of the different abilities that you're seeing in this playthrough to support that flexibility.
And on that note too, dual wielding wands, I probably mentioned this last time we were in an interview together for Showcase Extended, that I was so excited about it. And when I was down at Irvine, the team was very generous to let me play a very early build, and I got to experience the dual wielding wands, and it's so snappy and fun. It's exactly what I was thinking it would be. But I'm curious because we're seeing a little bit of that now, where you have different spell casting effects on each. So I imagine there's probably some really incredible combos.
Animation
have you like seen
casting with a wand.
Some special combos yourselves, or maybe what testers have managed to pull off?
Yeah, definitely. So, with Into the Fray, you could use like a fireball ability that creates like an AoE on the ground, right? And then pull the enemy into the fire, and they get on fire. But in terms of the wands, right? Like what you're seeing there is a sort of enchanted wand, and there are potentially other elements that you can maybe find. But Pillars is really known for their unique weapons and the unique permutations of enchantments that you can kind of see on them. So yeah.
So in this particular area, I did also get to play through this part, and first I realized you need to take out the healer first, otherwise it's like going down an up escalator. You're not making a lot of progress.
That's a good way to put it.
This is where I found that you really start to put these things together. So you froze.
And that's something, if you're like a Skyrim player, especially an original Skyrim player, you didn't see a lot of enemies being able to heal themselves or heal other enemies. So a lot of you will be like, well, having a healer as an enemy is all games do that. I've heard those kind of comments. All games do that. Why would they brag about that when all games do it? Well, not all games do that. Certainly, a lot of them actually don't do that. So I'm not saying they're breaking down any walls and running away with we're doing things no one else has done, but having these elements in here, like they're not just copying Skyrim, okay? Because if you want to have healing in Skyrim, you've got to have mods for that, for characters to be using potions, for there to be people healing other people in Skyrim. I don't think it happens in vanilla Skyrim at all. Basically not, anyways. So yeah, they're not copying a game like Skyrim here. They are doing something similar in it being a first-person RPG, but a lot of games are like that. So yeah, I like that aspect. Like, you've got to recognize who your enemies are and pick off the correct ones first, so you don't have a lot of frustration.
That larger enemy. So sort of talk about some of these elements and how you can even use them outside of combat.
Yeah, so we have an elemental system where you can light guys on fire, you can freeze them, you can shock them. We have objects in the world that the player can interact with. They're not just on weapons, right? They're not just on wands, right? You might find something with a sword that has it, right? Certain abilities might cause elemental damage. Also, your companions themselves, could have potentially some damage there.
There was something when I had gotten a play where I wandered somewhere else and ran into an area that was gated off, and I was able actually to use that freeze to help to progress in the exploration.
Yes, yeah. And so we have objects like that. We also have, maybe being able to burn brambles. Yeah.
Oh, so burn the underbrush and stuff to get out of the way so you can continue. Freeze and shatter a gate so you can continue. That's cool stuff. I like that.
Yeah, you can destroy barriers to find new areas to explore. You can freeze paths in the water to maybe reach ledges that you can't normally. Lots of fun options there.
And a lot of what we saw, like we saw a Tanglefoot ability, for instance, which was really cool because when you're freezing an enemy, you're totally freezing them. But when you're trapping them with the Tanglefoot ability, like ranged attackers can still get you. So there's a lot of nuance there that as a player you have to consider. But also a lot that was built off of the Pillars of Eternity universe, like Tanglefoot is directly...
So you start thinking this combat's very easy. But as you start looking at it, I mean, you've got to time your blocks. You've got short, medium, and long ranged abilities that you might have as well as your enemies. Like they say, like the pistols are not, you can't use a pistol and take somebody out at long range. You would be most accurate with a pistol at a medium range. You also can't have somebody hacking away at your legs and pull out a pistol and shoot them. They're probably too close. There's things where you need to really think about your combat and your enemy's combat both. So don't make the mistake of, yeah, I'm distracted by this guy's shoes. Showing a lot of ankle there. Don't get distracted. I just got distracted. What else is new? Don't get distracted and think that like the combat's just really simple. I think they're showing off that it's actually a little more complex. And I like her shoes on the right. She's got. Why am I concentrating on shoes right now? I'm very ADD. Those are very nice lace up high heel boots, though. I like those. Short, but yes, seriously, I do like those. I'd almost wear those myself, although really I don't need the heels, but something similar in a man's shoe.
Associated from those games. So I'm curious, like, how did you guys hone in on these abilities?
I
like,
just
what are
talked about
the
shoes.
combos
Sorry.
you were thinking about? anything that you brought over
Yeah.
and maybe changed or made new too?
Yeah, so for Tanglefoot, but because in an action first-person game, it's all about movement and trying to like crowd control. For Tanglefoot, right, it was about also creating space. So we already had freezing. You're crowd controlling that way, but with Tanglefoot, it's a little bit unique where they're rooted, and so they don't move, but they can still do attacks. So it's about trying to find that balance where you're not overpowering the enemy, and there's again choice and consequence for these mechanics, so that the player just doesn't like just stomp everybody all the time, so.
Well, let's go back a little bit because we got an opportunity to talk about that very Obsidian style depth and breadth.
So making the combat not easy because you got to make the correct choices in your combat, and also are your enemies making the right choices, and are your enemies diversified enough to really keep you scrambling? Diversified in their attacks, right? And in their abilities and in their weapons. Interesting.
Breadth of gameplay. I have watched the developer direct so many times, I've memorized all of your guys' lines, so that is directly lifted from there. But there's another very Obsidian element to Avowed, which is branching dialogue and how you make choices within the story too. And Carrie, you alluded to some consequences potentially if you make one decision or another, but it's again very much like playing your own way. So can you talk about just how impactful like those choices that you make are, and that branching dialogue, and how that can result in different paths for the player?
Absolutely. So again, for us, creating these choices, like,
I just go back and take a look at this. I'm sorry, I don't want to keep pausing this, but I want to take a look at these dialogue options here. Where were they? No, I'll pause on it. Hang on a second.
Which is branching dialogue.
So, you're not even here to deal with the Zorops themselves. I suppose I should just be grateful you're here at all, right? Well, he doesn't seem that's not a very grateful attitude.
Dialogue and how you make choices within the story too. And Carrie, you alluded to some consequences potentially if you make one decision or another, but it's again very much like playing your own.
We arrived at the cave last night, made camp, all went downhill from there.
So right? Can you talk about just how impactful like those choices that you make are, and that branching dialogue? And
I want to hear what she says, but I want to see this. So we arrived at the cave last night, made camp, and it all went downhill from there. He's explaining things. Here's your choices. Who's we? That sounds like a very suspicious question you're asking him. Next one is, did no one check for nearby dangers? In other words, how did you get waylaid in the night? Whose bright idea was it to rest in a Zorb cave for the night? Oh my, that's very accusatory. And 4 is, it must have been a massacre. That's more on the lines of, I feel bad for you guys. Those are some interesting branching dialogue choices, actually, which could lead you down 4 very, very different paths. That's interesting.
In different paths for the player?
Absolutely. So again, for us, creating these choices, like, the big ones that affect the outcome of a quest, or the well-being of certain characters or communities, are just as important as the smaller choices that you make in navigating
character.
a dialogue and kind of in subtle ways influencing your relationship with another character. But all of it is really centered around letting the player be the main character in this setting.
You will note that it did say up here alpha gameplay. So this stuff you're seeing right here, if you want to take a look at it, be like you start picking at the way the lips are moving or the way the character looks or anything else. This is alpha gameplay that they're showing in this portion of it. So it would have been earlier, much earlier gameplay clip. This one was. So I'm sure things have improved since then.
And so what we're seeing here is, the players, they've been exploring this grotto. They're finding the bodies of these dead soldiers and kind of picking up pieces of a story along the way. And so here they finally found the survivor and talking through them about what happened and getting a little bit more information. So there is a moment that's going to come up after this where the player can confront the guy who ran away. And make a pretty impactful choice with him about how they decide to navigate that conversation. And they can either, it's very obvious that this guy was in over his head, and then they can either sympathize with him and console him a little bit, or challenge him for his cowardice and for the way he abandoned his unit. And the way the player navigates that conversation definitely has big consequences for how that encounter plays out.
So you mentioned your player being the main character, but they're not the solo character. We see in this conversation Giada and Kai, I want to say. Can you tell us about the relationship with companions and how they interact both in the story and in gameplay?
Sure. So, your companions are your traveling partners in your journey through the Living Lands. They all have deep ties to different regions of the Living Lands, and they all have their own personal reasons for wanting to ally with the player and help them resolve the big conflicts that you're encountering over the course of the game. So they're your allies, in some ways your advisors, your local guides, and they provide a lot of additional commentary and context that reveals something both about their character, but also about the corner of the world that you're exploring.
Wait, so they don't just say, "I'm sworn to carry your burdens," and then get in your way and block you for going in and outdoors? Wow, how innovative. The companions actually sound pretty cool and pretty necessary here, so that's good.
And Kai in particular has a pretty deep history with Shatterscarp that comes out a little bit over the course of this quest as he starts to see how the region and the people have changed in his absence and maybe where he let them down. But obviously they're also your allies in battle, and that's something that Gabe can speak to.
Yeah, so for the companions, we wanted to make sure that they had their role in the combat systems. And so, again, like I talked about, Kai can help you with the burning brambles, and Giada is healing, right? And so Kai's kind of your tank. He has an ability that's called Taunt, or it's not called Taunt, but it's a Taunt, and a Taunt allows you to basically make the enemy take aggression from them and start to focus on Kai, and then Giada can have the ability to heal your party.
Guessing your companions are probably unkillable too.
Well, yeah. Should we assume there will be other companions throughout the game as well?
Yes, you'll meet a couple more. Kai and Giada are just two of them.
Okay. How many do we have?
I just know Obsidian known for some pretty great companions.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, exactly. It's certainly an expectation.
So how many companions are there in the game? They're not answering this. No one asked a specific question, but I'm asking it. How many companions are there in the game, and how many can travel with you at one time? 1, 2? Is it kind of like the Outer Worlds where you've got like 5 or 6 companions or whatever who travel with you in the ship? When you only take 2 or 3 with you at a time, 2 with you at a time. I can't remember which it is now, but yeah, be interested to know that. Hopefully, they give out that info later.
But you mentioned Shatterscarp. I'm already really sad for Kai, and I already want to console him because I feel like there's some history to uncover there. But what is Shatterscarp? That's obviously where we are in this mission, in this extended footage that we've been seeing from Developer Direct. What is the context to Shatterscarp that we should know?
Yeah, so as you can see, it's a very arid environment. A lot of the locals who have settled here are originally from Rawatai, which returning Pillars players will recognize as kind of this very fun but somewhat militaristic culture, which Kai originally comes from as well. So you've got this sort of very hardy little settlement on the cliffs overlooking the coast called Thirdborn. But what the player encounters here is a ramp up in tensions between their people, the Adirian Empire, and the locals. Again, here primarily settled around Tyans, as everybody's sort of trying to negotiate some conflicts that are taking place and starting to grow in the Living Lands. You're also seeing the stronger effects of something called the Dream Scourge, which is this spiritual plague that you've been sent here to investigate. And
it's a little thing, but I like how when you jump down, you see your hands just kind of come up, like float and steady yourself. It's just a nice little thing.
just to add into that mix, we've also got an archmage who has taken up one corner of the map and created her own little frozen labyrinth.
Oh, that
there.
sounds like a good boss.
There are a lot of different characters, a lot of different tensions to navigate, and that the player's going to get to encounter here.
Carrie, stop! You're saying too much.
So we're noticing just with the player, they're mantling their way through. It's a very vertical area, and there was actually one part of the footage where they look down and there's enemies there, and they choose not to engage. So if you could just talk about like the size of this area and just like how that affords the ability to like choose even just what to engage with and what not
Your
to.
literal path.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like it's open zone, right? So comparable to Outer Worlds areas on the larger side, and multiple paths essentially to be able to tackle combat situations
Or avoid them.
or
I
avoid
suppose.
them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this area is entirely discoverable, which means it's also entirely missable. And I really want to give a shout out to Tyler McCombs, who's the area designer who set up the little grotto we're exploring. As you mentioned, there's a wonderful sense of verticality, just a lot of wonderful nooks and crannies to explore.
It really does.
And that's something that we really wanted to take advantage of, and also set up, as Gabe mentioned, really fun combat encounters around that let you either just jump in, charge right in, or take a more tactical and measured approach. And you see that even in this first combat that you encounter when you dive through that skull's mouth and you come up out of the water. Our playtester here takes the rightmost path, which is the sneaky one, but you can also just, Leroy Jenkins your way up the middle and just jump right into the fray.
I love that. Well, we got so much additional detail in this podcast. Really appreciate you both joining us. But before we wrap up, we have just a couple more questions too. Developer Direct is like an interesting show for us because we hand over complete reins to the developers, wanting to give you all an opportunity to talk about the craft, the very Obsidian craft in your guys' case, that goes into the game and how the team thinks about things when you're putting things together. So I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about that kind of team culture, and also both of your roles. Like, how do they integrate? What does a creative director do? What does a gameplay director do? And what's your day-to-day working together like to bring this game together to life?
Want to start?
Sure. So as the game director on the project, I'm responsible for setting out the vision and helping to guide the team in all of our different efforts towards that, and make sure that we're really building a cohesive and exciting player experience. And both the joy and the challenge of that is, RPGs are so feature rich and so content rich. We have so many different systems supporting our combat, our exploration, and then there's the way we build quests, the way we seed them through the world, the way we try to nudge players towards them without being too heavy-handed about it. And so, we're always trying to balance how these elements work together to, again, create an experience that's cohesive and consistent, but also allow room for surprises and nuance and fun, and not get so precious about the dogma of what we're building that we don't allow for those expressions of creativity and those things that, we as developers love to create, and we know players are going to love to find.
Love it.
Yeah,
I love hearing that.
As my role as gameplay director, I'm trying to direct a team for that's kind of more revolved around conversations, exploration, and combat. Right, that's kind of the big overseen parts of the game, and just working with Carrie to just make sure that we're following our pillars.
If you will.
Yeah, exactly.
No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. Following our pillars, and having little back and forth fights, right? About whether the blocker should be holding a shield or the blocker should be holding a spear.
You were absolutely right, by the way.
But yeah, just making sure that we're working together to be able to get the gameplay features that are fun, make sure it fits in the lore, make sure it fits part of the world, make sure we're not doing anything that's maybe doesn't fit within the Obsidian brand, right? Like things that are mechanics that are too binary, right? And more a little bit more less black and white and a little bit more like how RPG players would like them to be. So yeah.
And
Very
one of
cool.
the great things about our studio culture is, so many of us are RPG fans, and I feel like one of the real strengths of being a mid-sized developer is we are, just large enough to be ambitious with the gameplay and the content we build, but also, small enough that we can still be nimble and again, still, allow people to take big swings. And the Leviathan Hollow that we see in this this playthrough is a really great example of that.
I just want to jump in just with my thoughts again. I just want to say, I certainly understand, again, people who will look at this game and look at what's being shown off and what's being said about it and say, yeah, this is not a game I'm interested in playing. Absolutely 100% understand that. Because, again, gamers are different. Gamers like different things. Some of the things we like and don't like change over time, back and forth, like a tide going in and out. Sometimes we'll like certain things and then we'll move on to something else, and then we might move back to what we liked before. But we're all different in what we choose to enjoy. What I do have a bit of a problem with is somebody looking at something like this, like the gameplay it's being shown and what's being said about it, and say, that's a bad game. I don't think because a company does something, creates a game that you don't look at as something you'd want to play, that doesn't make it a bad game in and of itself. It just makes it something that doesn't interest you, that doesn't pique your interest or make you want to play it. But some people I know will just go online and they'll just, if it doesn't appeal to them or they find anything in it that doesn't appeal to them, they will dump all over it. And I know a lot of people on the comments on other stuff about Avowed were also dumping on the Outer Worlds. Again, if the Outer Worlds is not the kind of game you would want to play, that's fine. You're allowed to. But again, to say the Outer Worlds is a bad game is to ignore their score on Steam, is to ignore what people actually said about the game who played it. The Outer Worlds is a good game. It's not a great game. It didn't break down any barriers, okay? It didn't lead the industry in anything. But it was a good, fun game that many people enjoyed. Therefore, the Outer Worlds is a good game. You may not like it, but it's still a good game. Again, Avowed may not break down any walls. Okay, it may not lead the industry in anything. Although, let's see once it comes out. Who knows? I don't know. You don't know. It isn't out yet. It may or may not have great sales. We won't even know. We won't know until it's been out for some time. It's not out yet. But to come in and look at this and listen to this and say that's a bad game is, to me, ludicrous. It's somebody expressing just a nasty opinion for reasons unknown. It's not a bad game, okay? This is probably going to be a fairly well-selling game and a fairly well-liked game. Now, from there, it could go either way, depending on how the game actually plays, how people actually enjoy it, if there's any bugs, everything else. From it's probably going to do fairly well, it could go up, or it could go down. We won't know. But let's just not paint this with that. This is a bad game. This is a terrible game. This is a horrible game. Because that's just like don't listen to people who say that, especially when the game isn't even out yet. I'm just kind of cheering for Avowed, for Obsidian to do well with this game, because I want them to do well with this game. I want it to be a game that I enjoy. Okay, I admit that. And again, I enjoyed the Outer Worlds immensely, far more than I thought I was going to. And I still think that a lot of people who complain about the Outer Worlds have never played it. And although you can have an opinion on a game that you've never played, your opinion is somewhat lessened. That's just truth. It's somewhat of a lesser opinion if you've never actually played it. And you're going to say, Dread, you rag on Starfield all the time. But the reasons I rag on Starfield don't require me to have played the game, okay? Certainly when somebody's played the game and they come out, they say, wow, I played 300 hours of this game, and I got to tell you, it's ass. Certainly that carries a lot of weight. I have never played Starfield. I never will play Starfield. My main focus is bad gaming companies and bad gaming practices, of which Starfield and Bethesda are full of. That and just going over the history of the company Bethesda and why Starfield probably won't ever get much better because Bethesda's never made anything better after they put it out, ever. So that's where I come by my opinions on Starfield more than anything. Plus, you start looking at Steam reviews after it's been out for 4 months and watching them tank and realize a lot of people agree with that who have even played it. Okay. But in this case, I'm saying, people who want to shit on a game because they don't like the studio or they prefer other kinds of games or they prefer PlayStation and this is an Xbox game. To me, that's just crap, man. That's just crap. You either give the game a shot and see if you like it, or you choose to move on and do something else because it's not a game that appeals to you. And if it's not a game that appeals to you, why keep commenting on it? I get suspicious of that. And again, we get into the console wars. I don't give a crap about your console wars. They don't matter to me at all. They don't matter to most people. They're all in your head, and it's kind of sad. So I'm gonna let these the rest of this play out here. Boy, I really did run long on this video, and I do apologize, but there was a lot to take in here.
Originally, it was scoped to be much smaller. And again, we found that the area designer, Tyler, who was working on that, was had a schedule, things were going great. And so his producer and his lead kind of, looked at the schedule and said, yeah, if you want, you've got time to make something more out of this. And we've got an excellent showpiece here that, again, is, a wonderful combination of, strong planning and coordination on the production side, to be sure, but also just some really great initiative, from the team.
So it's something I've been wondering since Avowed was first revealed a few years back with that teaser. And that is like, what can we glean from the title? When I think of like Avowed, like you can vow revenge, you could be avowed enemies. It feels like very personal. I'm just curious, like what we can take away from the title as we.
What I would have liked them to ask, and they're not going to, I know it's going to be not too difficult questions, but I would have liked them to ask what changed in the game design between when that first trailer came out and what we're about to see in a couple of months when this launches, because we have a very different mood in that first trailer than what we see in the game now. I would have liked to have that question actually asked and answered, because I think it would be interesting, not because it's necessarily going to make people happy who wanted the game to look like that original trailer, but I just think it would have been an interesting question to get an answer to.
I want more now, but this is all we're going to get today.
Yeah.
But just what can we be thinking about here?
So I won't say too much this time, Gabe, but so as the player character, you're the envoy. So you're a representative of the Adirian Empire. You are the personal representative of the Emperor himself, and you're sent here on this mission to investigate the spiritual plague. So on the one hand, you're vowed to the Emperor and the Empire that you serve, but while you're in the Living Lands, you might discover another unique connection to something else that's very close to you. So this game is very much about choosing your loyalties and choosing what matters most to you. And that's all I'll say.
So maybe starting out as an envoy means you won't stay. You could choose to not stay as an envoy and to serve something else instead. That's interesting. I like to hear that. I do.
About this.
All right. Well, I know what matters most to me is getting to play this game. We'll talk more about that, but we will hear a little bit more because coming up, I want to say this Sunday, Carrie, you're going to be on Drop Frames with JP and Co and Ezekiel. So make sure you tune into that. Anything else, like before we let you go, though, that you want to talk about?
I just can't wait for players to jump into the Living Lands for themselves and explore all that it has to offer. Again, one of the big delights of being a developer on a game like this is creating so much for players to find, and knowing that not everybody's going to seek it out and not everybody's going to find it, but knowing that the players who do are really going to enjoy the secrets they discover.
Can you imagine watching somebody else play your game and you're like, oh, they're gonna they went the other way. Oh, they went to the left. They just gone to the right. They went up. Oh, and you're thinking that because you're like, oh, you want them to discover this little thing that is over here. That would be pretty pretty frustrating, pretty weird to watch, I think, knowing all the secrets that are out there and watching people just miss some or be completely oblivious to something as they go by. That would be weird. That would be weird.
I know that we've talked about a lot of stuff, but it's still just
a slice.
yeah, it's
Yes.
just a slice. Yeah.
I want it.
I
want
know.
it.
Yes, absolutely. And we did get an opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper. So thank you both again so much for coming out and being able to talk to us. But yes, it is such a small slice of it. So I'm excited to see more. And we did announce in Developer Direct that the game is coming out in fall 2024. So it won't be too long before we'll all be able to do so. And otherwise, we will see you for a regularly scheduled episode of the podcast with a regular length of a podcast later this week. So you get 2 in 1 week.
So in the fall, Avowed comes out. That's pretty good. That's pretty excellent. Looking forward to it. I'm sure on my YouTube channel, Miss Valley Gaming, we will be playing a ton of Avowed, I'm quite sure. We also have some other things we're going to be playing on that channel as well going forward. Yeah, we won't talk about that. But if you check out the links down below, for sure, if you're interested in gameplay by myself, go check out Miss Valley Gaming. Maybe subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, all that good stuff, because I will be bringing some more games to that channel, and it'll be some exciting stuff. I've also got Miss Valley Mods. That's mods with a Z. That is a rebranded channel for Miss Valley Skyrim. This is where we're going to showcase modded gameplay. So fan modded gameplay of the various games, doing some Let's Play, doing some role play, doing all kinds of fun stuff. We will be doing a lot of Skyrim there, of course, because I love Skyrim. I'm also going to be bringing Dragon Age Origins as a next game to that channel. Modded, I've never played that game modded before. It's been a while since I played it. That's pretty exciting as well. And again, Avowed will be coming to Miss Valley Gaming for sure in the fall. We do have some other stuff happening before that, which we'll talk about later on. But everybody, I appreciate you all so much. Don't forget down below also a link to Miss Valley Discord. Love to have you join up. All my stuff gets posted there, and I talk about various things in my various channels there. Get a lot of good people there, including a lot of other content creators you may be able to hook up with and find their stuff there as well. And original video will be linked down below from Miss Valley Entertainment News. Once again, sorry this goes so long, but they talk for 25 minutes. I talk for a little bit longer than that. And here we are coming up on almost an hour. I appreciate you all so much. We'll catch you later. My name is Dread. This is Miss Valley Entertainment News. Good night.